I'm fully of the belief that, during a fast, I think we are so close and connected to God that we're able to hear Him a lot more clearly. So a lot of the prayers that we may have been praying for quite some time, they're answered because there's just this connection, right? The impartation that God is able to have on us during a period of fasting, that we're so close to Him and so open spiritually, that we're able to hear Him a lot more clear, right? And able to get the answers to prayers that we've been praying. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Myles High Podcast. This is Myles Jr. I'm your host. And as always, on this podcast, my vision is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right? Wow, so it's been a minute. It's good to be back. I haven't spoken. I haven't done this since last year, December. So it's been it's been a month, maybe a month and a half or so. Took a break over the Christmas holidays and the New Year's holidays. Had a great time, had a great break, had a good time with family, good time with friends. Just had a good break, man. And, this last month, I have officially entered the 40-40 club. Your boy celebrated a birthday, my 40th to be exact. And I must say, I still feel young, still look young. Hopefully, I still look young. But I had a good time celebration. My wife, Cherise, did a great job celebrating with me and celebrating me on my birthday. So, babe, thank you for that again.
You're welcome.
She did. I must say, I must commend her. She hooked me up with a lot of my favorite things for my 40th. So I had a great time. But I miss this, man. I miss doing this pod. It's something that I enjoy doing, especially when I get to run into people and they commend me of, the topics I'd be talking about and the principles that I'd be sharing. It's always good to know that it's having some type of impact and effect on others. So that brings me to what I want to talk about today, right? So I told you guys in my last few pods, every year going into a new year, I fast at the top of every year. And, this year wasn't any different. I usually start my fast after my birthday. I take the time out to enjoy my birthday, of course. So after my birthday last month, I decided to fast and just had a really great fast this year. I enjoy fasting and I enjoy setting time aside at the top of every year to fast, right? And to dedicate time in preparing for the rest of the year. And I had such a great experience during my fast. It's something that I wanted to share on the pod today, right? And so the topic for today is we're going to take a deep dive into prayer and fasting. All right, we're going to take a very deep dive into prayer and fasting because, I think fasting is something that is important, not just praying, right, but fasting in particular. I think it's something that's important that we all should do to strengthen our spirit, man, and to strengthen us as individuals in all aspects of our lives, right? And there were some things that I was reminded of, and just it encouraged me throughout my fast that I wanted to share. But before I get in too deep with prayer and fasting, let's start with defining fasting, right? And so fasting is defined as the willful abstaining from natural pleasures for a spiritual purpose. All right, the willful abstaining from natural pleasures for a spiritual purpose. So, you can abstain from anything that brings pleasure to you, right? So it could be watching sports. It could be going to the gym. It could be listening to music. It could be traveling. It could be eating food. It could be enjoying a beverage, whatever your favorite beverage is. It could be sex, anything that brings pleasure to you, abstaining from that or setting time aside to abstain from it would be considered fasting. And I think, there's numerous of ways that we've been taught to fast, right? It depends on where you are in your maturity, your spiritual maturity, or where you are in your personal maturity, right? What capabilities do you have as far as your health issues are concerned? What are you able to do during a fast? But nonetheless, whatever it is, however you choose to do it, I think setting time aside to fast is very important. And there are some effects of fasting. I just want to name a few. These are by no means the only effects of fasting. There are tons of effects that we get when we fast. But I wanted to highlight just a few, right? And the first is it increases your spiritual capacity. And I think this is probably the most important effect, or the most the biggest effect that fasting has on us, right? It allows our spiritual capabilities, or the capacity that we have spiritually, to be increased, right? Fasting also breaks habits. So, those things that are habitual to us that we can't seem to get rid of, right? Whether it's caffeine, like drinking coffee, right? Or drinking that Coke soda that everyone loves. Whether it's eating a particular type of food, or even, we could go extended further into things like smoking, pornography, like all of these things that are addictive to us, right? And it seems to have this control over us. A lot of the times, the best way, or one of the ways that we can break away from those habits, is by going on a fast. Fasting also increases our physical health. There are a lot of health issues that we have more times than not because of the food that we consume, right? So depriving our body of that food for a period allows our body to kind of re-energize itself and rebuild itself, right? And it cures us from a lot of the health issues that we have. And outside of that, we get to get in a little bit of shape, right? We lose some weight, which is just a byproduct of fasting, but it increases our physical and improves our physical health. Fasting also improves our physical and spiritual freedom, right? There's no distraction when it comes to like these things that we're abstaining from, right? When we talk about food, when we talk about TV, when we talk about, social media and scrolling on our phones, fasting from these things allows us to put more focus on our spiritual walk, right? And being able to focus in on developing and building ourselves individually on a personal standpoint, and then spiritually. So that allows us to increase our physical and spiritual freedom, right? We don't have to think about what it is that we're going to eat today for breakfast, and then what we have to cook for lunch, and what we have to prepare for dinner. We could use that time that we usually spend focusing on those things and really diving into the Word and praying, right? And spending time with God. Fasting also brings answers to prayer, right? I'm fully of the belief that, during a fast, I think we are so close and connected to God that we're able to hear Him a lot more clearly. So a lot of the prayers that we may have been praying for quite some time, they're answered because there's just this connection, right? This impartation that God is able to have on us during a period of fasting, that we're so close to Him and so open spiritually that we're able to hear Him a lot more clear, right? And able to get the answers to prayers that we've been praying. And then finally, and these are not all the effects; these are just the effects that I wanted to highlight. But the last one is you improve, or you build your intimacy with God, right? You are able to get way more intimate with God during a fast, right? There's no distraction, or hopefully no distractions. You're able to get away from a lot of the things that would, take our focus away. Because, as we go through life, things happen, people become a distraction, events become a distraction, all these things that we have to tend to on a day-to-day basis. But dedicating a period of time to consecrate ourselves and really hone in on focusing and building our spirit man allows us to be a bit more intimate with God, right? And grow this intimacy. So, those are just some of the effects of fasting. And it's important to replace your meals during a fast with the Word of God and praying. You don't just fast to say, okay, I'm not going to eat, but I'm still going to like watch TV. I'm still going to scroll social media or whatever. It has to be a choice that you make to say, okay, I'm going to abstain from doing these list of things. And in place of that, I'm going in place of eating, in place of doing all the things that I love to do or that I enjoy doing. I'm going to spend time in the Word, and I'm going to spend time praying. And that's how, we're able to build ourselves spiritually, right? Because, when it comes to fasting and praying, praying in particular, prayer really isn't the issue, because a lot of times people pray and they say, man, my prayers aren't getting answered. And this is the thing that really hit home for me in the fast that I had last month. It's not something that I haven't heard before. It wasn't something that I didn't know, but it was something that I was really reminded of in my spirit. And it was the fact that, sometimes our prayer isn't answered because of our lack of faith. I was reminded in particular that during the fast, or the reason we fast, is to grow and build our faith, right? And there was a scripture that the Spirit spoke to me and that I reviewed, and it just, it reminded me of how important fasting is, right? So this was in Matthew 17. So this was when this gentleman had a son who was sick and demon possessed, and he brought his son to the disciples, asking the disciples to cast out the demons and heal his son, and the disciples couldn't do it, right? And this guy then brought his son to Jesus, and asked Jesus to heal his son of this sickness and of this demon possession. And he told him that, man, I asked your disciples to do it, but they couldn't do it, right? And Jesus was like, all right, man, look, he healed the boy, he cast out the demons, and told them to go about their way. And they, the young boy was healed. Later on that day, the disciples came to Jesus and asked him this question. And the question was, man, why couldn't we cast out the demons? Like, why couldn't we do the act that you did? And this was Jesus's response to them, right? I want to read this. And it's Matthew 17, verse 20. And it says, so Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief, for assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this is very important. This kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. So I remember, like, when I first used to read this verse, I thought what Jesus was referring to when he said this kind, he was referring to like being able to cast out demons, right? Because that was the disciples' question to him, like, why couldn't we cast out the demons? And I thought he was saying, look, you the only way you could cast out demons and do these type of miracles is through prayer and fasting. This kind doesn't come except for prayer and fasting. But what I was reminded of, and I learned this again, that initially when I read this verse, that's kind of how I understood it and perceived it. But through understanding and learning the Bible and getting revelation, I started to learn that Jesus wasn't talking about just casting out the demons, but he was talking about this kind of faith, right? This kind of faith that you need comes through prayer and fasting. And it was on this fast that I was reminded of that. I was reminded of the importance of fasting and why it's important. Jesus said, however, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting, right? And he said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, right? And if you're familiar with a mustard seed, right? A mustard seed is a very, very small seed, right? It could almost be invisible to the eye how small the seed is. But the mustard tree, or the tree that comes from the seed, grows to be one of the largest trees in existence. And I think what Jesus was trying to portray there was, if your faith starts as a mustard seed, right, which I'm sure is the size all of our faith starts at. But if you put that faith or put that seed in the right environment, that seed is able to grow the size of the tree that grows from a mustard seed. And he was telling us, in order for our faith to grow, right, to be as big and as strong and as large as the tree that comes from the mustard seed, the environment that we have to place our faith in or place ourselves in is in prayer and fasting. So a lot of the times, we're praying for things to happen in our lives and for the desires of our heart to be met. And we get disappointed because, these prayers aren't being answered. And, one of the main reasons is because of this lack of faith, right? We're praying, but we're not really believing what we pray, right? Our faith isn't strong enough for us to believe, right? We don't even have the ability to have the faith that we need because we don't consecrate ourselves and set time aside to fast and to pray. It reminds me of my dad, right? And I was so in awe that last month, while I was going through my fast, and it just kind of struck a nerve with me because I was always amazed at the kind of faith that my dad had, right? I always said that, man, I've never met someone that had the faith that he had. And I was reminded of the type of person that my dad was. He was a person that fasted religiously, right? Not just at the top of the year for him, right? But him and my mother, they also fasted in periods throughout the year, right? He was adamant about being a fasted person, right? Always fasting, even fasting, with important events coming up or important dates coming up in his life, he would fast leading up to that. And, I observed it and understood what he was doing, but I guess never really understood why entirely until now. And now I'm understanding why even my faith has grown to the point it's grown to, right? Because of the time that I set aside to fast. A lot of the things that are happening in my life and the positive things that are going on, I truly believe it's because of the prayers that I'm able to put in, but not just that, but because of the fasting that I do, right? Because I'm allowing God to speak to me, right? Creating those times of spiritual intimacy, and increasing my spiritual capacity for Him to fill me with the guidance and the wisdom and the understanding of what He wants me to do and what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think it creates this environment of positivity, right? And this environment of prayers being answered and things happening to me because of the time that I'm dedicating, right? And even the decisions that I make, right? The way that I'm able to apply the knowledge and understanding that I have to my daily life, right? And showing myself wise and with wisdom. I think it's all tied back to setting time aside in this fast to build my faith, because fasting helps you to grow and develop your faith. And I truly believe that, Jesus fasted and prayed religiously, right? Every morning, early in the morning, he would wake up and pray for hours, and his disciples would be with him. And, he would take them sometimes to pray with him. But, they human beings just like me. And, we get tired early in the mornings and, we fall asleep. So Jesus was over there, praying and dedicating himself to building his walk, his spirit, man. And us as disciples, like we're sleeping, right? But, the principle here is that faith is the key. Faith is definitely the key. And I could remember when, in the Bible, when Jesus was telling his disciples that, he was about to be betrayed and he was going to be arrested and then he was going to die, right? And he told his disciples, man, like, some of you guys are going to fall away from me, right? Or you're not going to acknowledge me as your leader, as your Lord. And he spoke directly to Peter, and he's like, Peter, you're going to deny me. And Peter was like, Lord, I'm never going to deny you. Me? If you die, I'm going to die next to you, right? Peter was that type of person, like, man, are you crazy? Like, who are you talking to right now? Like, I'm not going to do this. And, Jesus looked at him and I imagine him just smirking at Peter, right? And it was in Luke 22, when he told him, Peter, man, I just pray for your faith, right? He told him he was going to be tempted. He told him that he was going to deny him 3 times. Peter adamantly said, man, that is crazy talk. I will never do that. And, Jesus' response to him is, man, I just pray for your faith. Because even if you go through what it is that I'm saying you're going to go through, I want your faith to remain intact. I want your faith to remain strong, because faith is the key. So in everything that we do, I think the focus that we should have, at least my focus for this year, and I've been praying and meditating on this since my fast, and it's for my faith to grow, and it's for me to really dedicate my year to building that intimacy with God and to increasing my spiritual capacity, because I don't think anything can happen without faith, right? And the level of faith that we have is really determined by the dedication we place on fasting and praying. Fasting and praying is of utmost importance, and I came out of my fast just so encouraged, right? I entered this year a bit anxious, right? A bit anxious of all the plans that I had. We launched our Monroe Institute of Leadership. We launched our 2 courses last month. I'm excited about that. We launched the new version of our Monroe Global app. And I have a ton of other plans, professionally and personally, that I'm hoping to accomplish this year. And because of all those planning and goals that I've set, I came into this year a little anxious, turning 40, enjoying my time with my wife, but wanting to, do a whole lot more than I did last year. I was a bit anxious. And during my fast, I was just reminded, God reminded me of just having faith, right? And not worrying about or having anxiety about the things that I can't control, right? I set the plans and put those plans in line with, what he wants me to do. And I do my part, right? And that's all I can worry about. And I could, go to bed at night sleeping soundly and calmly, because, I know I've done all that I can do, and I'm just placing it in his hands now to fulfill what he wants to fulfill on this earth. But that only comes because, when your faith is strong, right, and you receive a vision or a word from God, you're able to just do what it is that you need to do to get that vision out or get that vision accomplished, and then everything else is up to God. But that can't happen unless you have the amount of faith that only comes through prayer and fasting. So that's what I wanted to share. I want us to be intentional this year about building our faith, right? So that's setting time aside, and it doesn't have to just be at the beginning of the year, right? We can do it periodically throughout this year, and that's what I intend to do. But setting time aside to fasting and praying and building our faith, building our spirit, man. And I promise you, this year is going to go 100 times better for you if you're able to do that and be successful in doing that. So that's my challenge for you at the top of this year. I'm hoping that we all can be successful, not only in our spiritual life, but also in our professional and personal lives. And it all comes down to us being able to build our faith. All right. So that brings us to the portion of the pod, what I like to call the milestones. One of my favorite parts of the pod, because I get to leave you just with some words of encouragement or something that you can apply to your life today. And the milestone for today's episode ties back into what I was talking about earlier, but it's simply faith is believing before what will only make sense after. Again, faith is believing before what will only make sense after. So and that's a quote that I heard from Stephen Furtick. And I heard it from him, and it was just something that really struck a nerve with me, especially, while I was going through my fast, because, sometimes we need the amount of faith that we need is almost like impossible faith, right? Faith that is unquestionable, right? Because you're saying something or you're doing something or attempting something that in the visible doesn't make any sense, right? You're unaware of how it's going to come about. But you're doing it because it's what you're supposed to do. It's God given to you as a vision, and you're having the faith that is necessary to believe, even if you can't see it in the physical, right? So faith is believing before what will only make sense after. All right, so that's the word I wanted to leave with you. Let's lead our life with faith this year. And that's my encouragement for you today. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. It's so good to be back. So good to be able to talk to you guys again. As always, the vision and goal of this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right. Until next time, you guys stay blessed.